All right, guys, this is it. This is our final episode of the year. Thank you for watching RPad TV
The last one?
for this year. We
Oh.
have Christmas and Hanukkah and whatever holidays,
all,
whatever
all,
holidays,
all the different flavors of holiday.
all 31 or 32. How many does Baskin Robbins have? I have no
I thought
idea.
it was 31.
Yeah, let's go with 31.
Oh, I'm going to pretend like I don't totally exactly know the right number.
So we're going to have a fun one today. It was 50 years ago that Mel Brooks released a pair of movies that, in my mind, these are legendary comedies, Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. I've invited Mac and Paul to talk about these two movies, why they're so legendary, and why they've aged so well. And also, we're going to have a little bonus discussion at the end because the Superman trailer came out today, and as nerds, we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
But first, let's see how you guys are doing. Mac, what is new with you? Young Mackenstein.
Young Mackenstein.
Or Mackenstein.
A lot going on. Made new Turtle Beach hoodies for the team.
Ooh.
That's what I'm wearing right now. And then, just getting ready for the holidays. I've, family coming in and all that stuff. So just preparing mentally, physically, emotionally, all that stuff.
What's been the hot product for Christmas at Turtle Beach this year?
Right now, I think mostly just because it's new is that there's a controller. I think I have it. It's the one that has like the little button and control like modules that flip, so you can kind of have a controller if you're more for like fighting games, or if you're more like FPS, like standard kind of Xbox or PlayStation control. Like it kind of has everything all in one. Super cool. I've been using it to play Indiana Jones on the PC.
Ooh.
And it's fantastic. Both the game and the controls.
Very cool, guys. If you want to learn more about that controller, hit up the Turtle Beach website. A direct link is in the video description.
Ooh,
and
right.
Paul, what is up with you, my friend?
Oh, just wrapping up another year of paulsemel.com. Today I spent prepping the best and worst games of the year stories that are coming out.
Yes.
Although there's not a lot of, I didn't actually play a lot of terrible games this year, but I think that may say more about me than anything else. This week I put up a rather interesting interview with the editors of this science fiction short story anthology called Depth Charge, which is full of science fiction stories in which either they're partially or totally set underwater. And not just on Earth either. There's some that are set on alien planets, and it includes a lot of actually classic writers, including Arthur C. Clarke, Jack Vance, and James Blish. So that's really cool. And then next week, my last sort of book piece for the year is going to be an interview with an author named Alex White, who I've interviewed a bunch of times before. This is his new book their new book that just came out, Ardent Violet and the Infinite Eye. It is the second book of a trilogy, and they've actually written a lot of really cool books over the years, and so that interview was going to run on Monday.
Cool. Very cool. Looking forward to that. There's also a direct link to paulsemel.com in the video description if you can't figure out how to spell Paul and Semel and put a .com.
You would be surprised.
You would
be surprised. I've had people misspell Paul.
How?
P-U-A-L.
I'm like P-A-U when Pau Gasol was on the Lakers.
I don't know.
Weird.
I don't go to Starbucks. I don't know how badly they spell it, but yeah.
So guys, let's start with Blazing Saddles, only because that one came out first and also comes first alphabetically. Paul, kick us off. How did you discover Blazing Saddles, and what did it mean to you at the time?
I've been racking my brain to remember when I saw either of these movies. I feel like I was too young to see them in theaters because I was 6 at the time. And nobody would have taken a 6-year-old to see that movie.
Right.
And I don't know that I would have wanted to see it either, because like I think that I saw it after I had seen other Mel Brooks movies.
Ah.
And but maybe not. I don't know. I honestly don't know where I saw it because I know for a fact that I didn't see a censored version of it. So it's not like I saw it on regular television and like they cut out like a lot of stuff. But I don't know. I honestly can't remember. But I know I saw it when I was definitely young, possibly a teenager. Like maybe it was something we rented from Blockbuster at
Oh,
the point, because that was how you watched movies. If you
Right.
didn't,
that was how one of us watched movies at that point. I mean, everybody was going to the video store to Blockbuster.
yeah, because that's how you watch. Especially if you didn't have HBO back then, you didn't have cable. Like that's how you watched movies. Is you would go to Blockbuster and rent.
I distinctly remember seeing it on TV. I was not yet a teenager. It was either on, and this is for the people that grew up in New York. And Paul, you might remember, I think you got the same channels in New Jersey. It was either on Channel 9 or Channel 11, like not the main network channels. So these
right.
were
It was, WWOR, WPIX.
PIX. Yeah. So it was.
Do you think it was part of the 430? Because it wasn't part of the 430 movie, I don't think.
I want to say it was during a holiday, either something I caught on like a Thanksgiving weekend or a Christmas weekend, where they would just load up.
Movie night? Just you had to time it right and just like everybody together in a single room and just shut up and like just be ready to go at like the movie start time on whatever channel you were watching.
Yeah. No such thing as rewinding at the time.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah, no pausing. So.
Yeah. Like if you had to go to the bathroom, you had to like wait for a commercial.
Yeah, shit out of luck.
Really
like,
fast.
It's like I'm gonna miss X amount of time of the show.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the first Mel Brooks movie I saw, but it was one of the first. Young Frankenstein was definitely the first for me. This was a little bit later, but also before I got to really appreciate all his stuff. I went through a period in grade school where my friend and I would watch A History of the World at least weekly, if not more. But this also made a pretty big impression on me because it was a different kind of comedy compared to the mainstream stuff. Like this, the airplane movies really resonated with me just for being a little different and wacky. Yeah. Mac, how about you? Do you remember the first time you saw Blazing Saddles?
I don't necessarily remember like both you specifics. I know that like my parents always had like an affinity for good comedy, Mel Brooks, like they love old Steve Martin, like just kind of the Smothers Brothers. Like I grew up with that kind of household TV on in the background. So
very cool.
Anything Mel Brooks was kind of open at that point. And I'm probably in that same boat where I'm guessing I probably started with a history of the world kind of thing, somewhere in that category, but then worked backwards. Because I remember seeing Blazing Saddles, Young Frankenstein, To Be or Not to Be. Like there were a handful of, and they were each of them, such unique movies in their own right, but also and you argue it's because Mel Brooks does the things that he does, is known for the things that he's known for doing in movies kind of time and time again.
Yeah. And I didn't appreciate it at the time.
No, not at all.
Mel Brooks has a bravery with his comedy. He tackles issues and makes jokes that, especially at the time, we're like, ooh, he went there.
Yeah, and even now, also, like there's a handful of them you can't do that now. Like
that's true. that's the other end of it. At the time, I didn't appreciate. I mean, there's a lot of both of these movies. They both have a lot of physical humor and broad comedy that will appeal to a kid. But as we got older, there's so much depth and so much more biting satire to this comedy.
Undertones.
Like I of course I was aware of racism as a preteen, but I didn't understand the impact it had on society and how bad it was for African Americans, and the way this movie approached it. Just amazing and brave. I mean, what do you think of the general tone of this movie's humor, Paul?
I mean, I agree with you. It did have that kind of mix of the smart and the silly. I mean, like, when I was a kid, I'm sure my favorite scene was, the farting around the campfire one.
Right.
But now I think that what I appreciate most is the weirdness when it ends up crossing over with a musical, and it's like,
right,
you're like sitting there going like, wait, what? Like, this is just like weird. I guess as a kid I appreciated that as well because it was just silly, but like it's just, I don't remember anybody doing that before. Like now that seems like the basis for so much weird comedy, but at the time you were just like, what the hell is going on? Like, so
right.
so I think that's like where, it's kind of like with Bugs Bunny in a weird way. Like you watch Bugs Bunny as a kid, like you love it when he hits Elmer Fudd with a hammer, but like,
right.
And like later you're like, I remember at one point thinking about Bugs Bunny and I was like, wait a minute. How did I know who Frank Sinatra was?
Right.
How did I know who Humphrey Bogart and all these other people were back then? Like, and why? Like, I don't think I could have, but I'm like, that's how I know these people. Like, I'm like, why did I find this funny that Humphrey Bogart showed up?
Right.
I don't know, but I just, you just pick up on things like that.
Yeah, he had a good mix, like an appropriate mix of, at the time, contemporary toilet humor.
Yes.
Right? Like, totally mixed in with the tone and the kind of message and the stance that they were taking against all those things, which, I mean, like we just said, to be honest, like I didn't even have any recollection of, of that as a kid. And then you watch it now, you're like, holy shit, like they were so far ahead of the game.
Right. And adding to that, he just does these absurd things like the Count Basie scene. This movie is set in 1874, but they have a scene where Bart, played by Cleavon Little, is just riding through the desert on his horse. Then all of a sudden, Count Basie and his orchestra is there playing like April in Paris or something, which is obviously not from 1874. But just the thought to have that song, that artist in the desert for 20 seconds and thinking of the scene and executing it, having Count Basie in mind and actually getting him, it's ridiculous. And I love that he thought of it and tried it. And he's done that in so many of his other movies. It makes no sense, but it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Now, when did the movie's approach to racism, when did you figure out what they were doing, in your head and come to appreciate that aspect of the movie? Because it's really smart and heady and clever. I don't think it was until my later teens when I realized how smart this movie was. How about you, Mac?
I'm going to go with yesterday. When I rewatched Blazing Saddles, just because as I know as part of our my homework assignment for this, I just want to like watch them both and see like freshly like what I think. And man, like you get into that movie, I mean, you're just like, oh man, like right out of the gate, they cross almost every line. There's the cross within the first 5 minutes of the movie, and then it was just kind of like, okay, and like again to the point of like things you absolutely couldn't say or do now,
right?
Whether or not you should or could is a whole other thing, but like it's just nuts the stuff that how far out they were in 1974. I mean, I was born in 76.
Right. And yeah, the ahead of its time is such a great way to put it. I guess Mel Brooks's humor in general.
Speaking of which, can we just take a quick, like, we got to derail here for a second?
Yeah.
This was Mel Brooks, one of the most kind of, we can get into this sec. Like Mel Brooks's movies are endearing because he puts himself on all of them and he always ends up playing like the most ridiculous character and is happy to just like, have egg on his face and look like an idiot and all that stuff. Like, I think that's a neat thing.
Yeah.
But like, he looked old in 1974. Yes. How old was he in those movies? Because like they did a lot of movies after those, and he was in those, and he still looked old. But he looked old in these.
Let's see. He was born on June 28th, 1926. So at that time, wow, how old does that make him now? Jeez.
98.
98.
Yoda.
Wow. So he was 48 then at the time of Blazing Saddles was released. Wow, that's crazy.
That he's my he was my age now. Talk about failure.
Yeah, where are your movies, Mac? It's like, I want to see these legendary comedy.
Oh no.
Now, this, of course, starred Cleavon Little and Gene Wilder. I'll let you guys guess who is who in this photo. Paul, tell me about what you thought of the performances of both of these actors and what you enjoyed about them.
I don't remember what I had seen Gene Wilder in. Probably
Willy
of course
Wonka.
not. Willy Wonka, probably, yeah. And so I think that him in this kind of threw me because it was such a different portrayal than Willy Wonka. I had no preconceived notion about Cleavon Little though, so I didn't really know what to expect from him. But they were both really, really good, and they really played off each other really, really well.
Yeah.
And, you know, I do remember like the one person that I kind of knew was Harvey Korman because I had watched a lot of the Carol Burnett show, and to see him in this, it was like you were kind of used to him playing all these different characters, so it was just like, okay, he's playing this jerk. Like, okay,
nobody plays rich creep better than him.
Yeah, he was good at that. He was good at that. But yeah, like Gene Wilder, like you kind of like come into it and you're like you kind of think of him like, I mean, well, when you watch like the other movie, like you kind of like him for a long time, and then you get to the end and he's kind of a dick for a moment, and you're like oh man, like don't be a dick. I don't want the candy guy to be a dick. And then it's like, oh wait, no, he was kind of faking it. Like, oh, all right. So you know, it seemed weird. It was like a weird like turn for him at the time. He kind of went on, for me at least.
Right.
I mean, he'd done other things probably before that I hadn't seen, and he certainly did things after that were like like the Candy movie kind of becomes an outlier actually.
Yeah. By the time I saw Blazing Saddles, I was familiar with him from Willy Wonka, from Young Frankenstein, and from all the movies he did with Richard Pryor, because those were on heavy cable rotation. Even Stir Crazy, Silver
Streak.
Yeah. Just incredible comedies. But yeah, I loved his performance in this because I was used to him being a comedic lead, whereas this he was. I always thought Cleavon Little was the hero of the story, and the Frisco Kid was along for the ride.
I think Cleavon Little deserves some level of amazing acting award for taking himself hostage.
That's my
favorite. If you watch that scene with Eagle Eyes, and like he doesn't crack one bit, like at all. He plays that so well. It's super fun to watch. And then I really identify with Gene Wilder's character because I feel like that's exactly what I would be like if I woke up drunk in a jail cell and somebody just let me out. I'm like, you want to partner up? Okay. Like I'd be all in.
Yeah, apparently their chemistry was just insane from day one. This is one of the most famous scenes where he's giving him the pep talk. He's like, these are farmers. They're simple salt of the earth people, morons. And apparently that line was improv'd, and that was Cleavon Little's natural reaction to it, which was great to see.
I think this is, going back to what you were saying too about, oh God, not Cleavon Little. What's his name?
Gene Wilder.
I think everything else I had seen him in up until that point was a more wild character, right? A more out there character. And then you see him play Lucky, right? And
Is more subdued,
and he's just like casual everyday. It's like, I don't know, is he acting, or is this just like, is he just super chill? Like, and that was kind of a neat way to see him kind of be a totally different, hopefully he was acting and that's just a low energy version.
But he still brought some silliness to it, like when they're talking in the prison, he's like, "See."
And then the other hand
is a rock. And I shoot with this hand. just a little. It's such a simple line.
That's Mel Brooks, though. That's like Mel Brooks things to me. Like, that's just him pulling off like great direction and delivering it really well.
And also, Mel Brooks was one of the co-writers of this movie. Let's put Mel up there. And he always manages to put a
and his secretary,
big-chested lady in all of his movies. So God bless. Teen me loved that as well. So
didn't Richard Pryor also help write Blazing Saddles? Am I wrong in thinking that?
I don't think that is correct, but let us check on IMDb.
Yes, he was. It
he
says
was.
He was one of the. I mean, he was one of a couple, but yeah, I remember. Yeah, he helped out on that. Okay. We also have to talk about Madeline Kahn.
Oh my God!
She's a repeat offender in both movies.
Lily von Stoop.
Yeah, I mean, she's just a comedic genius, and just again one of those people who is super committed to the role, even when the role has her doing something ridiculous,
like awful, ridiculous,
yeah.
And I love how her character just gets, she's sent in to seduce Bart, but Bart turns it on her and she ends up falling for him. And it's just such a, the way she plays it straight, it's so good.
I also forget that's where all the white women at kind of line comes from.
That is this line. Yeah, that is my favorite line of the movie. The way he delivers it. And for those of you who don't know, they're trying to sneak into this camp. They spot these two Klansmen, and Gene Wilder's character is like, "Boys, look what I found!" And he pulls Cleavon Little from behind a rock, and he just goes, "Where are the white women at?"
Like what better way to upset the white guy at that point?
Yes, yeah,
the Klansman.
And if you think about, at the time, at the time this was released, America was going through a dark period. I think it was the hangover of Vietnam was still in the air. It was kind of a dour time. Nothing I could have appreciated as a kid. But yeah, this movie was kind of a laugh that the nation needed. Apparently, it wasn't well received by the executives. They're like, "This is the dumbest thing I've ever seen." So what Mel Brooks did, like the executives almost didn't want to release it, but Mel Brooks arranged a screening for the employees of the studio, and everyone was going wild. So like real people loved it,
right?
Which is another thing. I don't think either of these movies were as appreciated as they should have been at the time. Like I was reading some of the reviews from 1974.
Oh wow!
From like LA Times and like, wow, critics were assholes then. Like this movie got railed by
you gotta remember that pre-internet there was a sort of kind of person that got to do film criticism,
right? And
they didn't appreciate comedies as much as serious dramas, and they didn't like stupid as much as smart, and
comedy is not for them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the good things about the internet is you now have people who will go to a movie like this and be able to appreciate it for what it is.
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot of bad things about film criticism with the internet, but we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, and at that time, a movie critic was a pretty big deal. There weren't a lot of them, like everyone can. We're talking about movies now. We review new stuff, so there was a handful of very powerful critics, and more often than not, they were of the pretentious sort. So
yeah.
Why don't we put a button on Blazing Saddles and move on to Young Frankenstein? Mac, do you remember how old you were when you saw this movie? Frankenstein, yes.
Again, probably younger than I should have been to watch that movie. Is the kind of a general rule. Like I could apply that to almost everything I saw as a kid. Was like I was raised by, I had great parents, but I was also raised by television. So
same.
But yeah, probably too early, but still, like, what I remember about Young Frankenstein the most, besides Gene Wilder being in it, was Igor, whatever we say his name. Like, talk about
Marty Feldman.
One of the most memorable just faces.
He looks like a cartoon character.
I think I mentioned this like a couple weeks back, but like my older daughter does plays and performances, and they actually just did a whole show with Young Frankenstein. And like, I think everybody who ever wants to try and play Igor Neat, like this is the goal. This is the role model you need to try and kind of achieve or beat, because he does it so well. He's just such a creep.
Yeah. I was around definitely single digits. I want to say I was like 6 or 7 when I first saw this, and I was definitely too young to be seeing this movie, but it resonated with me right away. This has even broader gags than Blazing Saddles. I mean, the monster himself is hilarious when he has that.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And just, Terry Garr was
everybody was like, at least like in my era, I think everybody was always like aware of Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein, right? Like I remember anytime there was a movie, a book, any like cool thing came out around like that whole, area, like I was always into it. And then when this came out, it was like, like a cool kind of, at the time, different way to tell the story of Frankenstein, and of course, like, done in such a way that only Mel Brooks could do.
Yeah.
Because to me, like, again, you have to work backwards. Like what I saw first was all the silly vampire Frankenstein things, but this was like, like there's a real live action version of it, but it's a comedy.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, by the time this came out, all that Bela Lugosi stuff was legendary at that point, and there was a massive library of that. Paul, do you remember how old you were about when you first saw Young Frankenstein?
I don't know the exact age. It was certainly before I saw Blazing Saddles, though. Right. And it was definitely also after I had watched all those classic horror movies, the Universal horror movies, with Lon Chaney and all those guys. Because I remember like being able to like watch Young Frankenstein as a parody of them, whereas I've never been into Westerns, and I certainly hadn't seen any before, and not too many since. So for me, that one I was going to because it was like a Mel Brooks movie. Or seeing, I have this weird feeling that I saw Young Frankenstein at my public library. This is when I was a kid. My public library would show movies. And I remember very distinctly watching Nosferatu, like the original Nosferatu, the black and white one. And I think that around Halloween, they showed like the original Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein and Dracula and all those. And I have a memory of watching Young Frankenstein at the library. And I think that's like where I first saw it. But I do feel like I saw it after I'd seen all those other movies. So I definitely was appreciating, like I knew who Frankenstein was. I knew Igor, and I could appreciate like what they were making fun of.
Right.
Lovingly, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. Now, as I said, this film has a lot of physical gags and broad comedy that we could appreciate as kids. But the satire of those Lon Chaney, Bela Lugosi movies, that's something I came to appreciate later. And even some of the out of character scenes Like one of the most famous scenes in this movie is the musical number when they sing "Putting on the Ritz."
Putting on Ritz.
Putting on Ritz.
Every single time I hear that song, like no matter who is doing it,
what you hear.
when they do that, they get to where fashion fits. I'm literally sitting in my head going, "Put on Ritz."
And that scene is hilarious. And I love the story behind the scene because Gene Wilder co-wrote this movie with Mel Brooks and others as well. And this was Gene's idea for the scene. Mel Brooks wasn't feeling it, and he had him. And Gene Wilder claims this is the only argument he's ever had with Mel Brooks. So he goes off on like 20 minutes on how this putting on the Ritz scene is hilarious and so important. And then finally Mel goes, "Okay, that's fine." And Gene was like, "What?" It's like, "I wanted to see if you'd fight for it, because if you didn't fight for it, then it probably wasn't funny. But now that I see how much you believe in it, I think there's something funny there that maybe I don't see." He tells that story. I think it's on one of the last interviews he did with Conan O'Brien. He actually recounts that story. If you want to look that up on YouTube, it's worth seeing.
I want to go rewatch that. I forgot he did that.
Yeah. Apparently the Walk This Way with Igor was also improvised too. And that's also one of the things I remember the most. The gag with how they didn't get the brain they want. Igor gets an abnormal brain that he dismissed as Abby someone. That's also one of my favorite scenes. Mac, what is some of your favorite moments or performances in Young Frankenstein?
Honestly, like only now, because now my visual image is Paul singing "Put on the Ritz."
It's such a great scene,
but it's neat to look back and see somebody like Peter Boyle in his prime, when most people, if anybody at this point, would almost like only remember him from Everybody Loves Raymond.
Right.
Most, like, I don't know what else you would think of him at, like, more frequently from most recently. But just seeing him kind of in his prime as a comedic actor, that is probably one of my funniest things. And then again, the putting on the Ritz scene was going to be my go-to, so I'm glad Paul brought it up. That's and then just like honestly, anything of Igor. I think Igor's just plays it so well that, like, if I were ever in a play and had to play Igor, I would want to try and emulate him.
Cloris Leachman also has one of my favorite lines where she's asking Dr. Frankenstein if he wants a nightcap, for she's like, "Warm brandy?" He's like, "No. Hot milk." "No, I'm good." "Ovaltine," which apparently was improvised as well, but it was so out of place. Obviously Ovaltine didn't, or maybe it did. I don't know how old Ovaltine is, but I'm guessing it did not exist in those times.
I thought Ovaltine was like old school.
Is it? I don't know. Does anyone know how old Ovaltine is?
when did Ovaltine happen?
Yes. But yeah, the way she delivered that line was just hilarious. Is Frau Blucher. Terry,
Ovaltine was developed in 1904.
Really?
See?
By a chemist in Bern, Switzerland.
Wow.
It was exported to Britain in 1909. And then it was in America in 1915.
Crazy.
So it wasn't accurate for the time of the movie, but it was certainly out at the time that they made the movie.
I want to talk about Terry Garr for a second, because I forget how much of a babe she was back in the day. I always see her as this in the goofic comedic roles that I know her from.
Mom and Dad Saved the Planet.
Yeah. I see her in that kind of role.
A great movie, by the way. Sorry.
But she was a total babe in 1974. And did we lose her this year or last year?
A few months ago, October 29th, 2024.
So another great performance as well in this fantastic movie. A really great ensemble cast with, if you look at all three of these guys, Madeline Kahn's in this, of course, as with most Mel Brooks movies. Not a lot of Mel Brooks in this one. He usually is good for a few scenes, but I think in this one he mostly did voice work. There's a gag, I don't know how true this is, where Gene Wilder says, the only way I'll do this movie is if Mel Brooks isn't in it. So I don't know if that's true or if he's just messing with his friends, but
that's funny.
It is a good soundbite.
I don't know what Mel Brooks could have played in this movie. Like, I don't know.
I mean,
like he would have played in them, and maybe that was Gene Wilder's thing. Like I don't want Mel to play the monster because.
Right, they could have had him as one of the villagers.
Well, he's only listed as director and writer.
Right.
He's not shown as playing any additional cast and crew.
Haha.
I'm looking right now.
Yeah. I don't know, because I wonder if that was just like the thing that Gene Wilder was like. I don't want him to be Igor. I don't want him to be the monster.
Oh. Yeah, he's the werewolf.
The villagers don't matter, so don't make. If you make him a villager, then you got to kind of give him something to do. And
right,
yeah. So he on IMDb, he's only listed as additional voices for the werewolf, the cat that gets hit by a dart, and Victor Frankenstein.
That's right. He did do Victor's voice, which is another off-screen thing. I believe. The blind hermit is also somebody famous, if I'm not mistaken. Are you still on IMDb, Mac?
Yeah. Which one is it?
The blind hermit that it gives him soup and
Gene Hackman.
Yeah, it is Gene Hackman. Yes.
Yeah. Yep, it is.
Also one of my favorite scenes.
Listed as blind man.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I think that was back when Gene Hackman was kind of very, very serious actor. Like, I think that was like around the time of the French Connection and things like that, and the Conversation. And I think that him doing that was I mean, I don't know this, of course, but like I would imagine that was a lot of fun for him to come on and be like in this silly movie and have everybody in the theater be like, "What the hell?"
I feel like it would have been a very fun time to be an actor and kind of get admitted into that Mel Brooks recurring kind of troupe of actors and actresses. Like that seems like it would have been a fun group to work with over and over again.
Right.
I agree, but I do think tonally the performances are a bit different in this one, because if you just watch the performances, don't think about what they're saying, everyone's playing it pretty straight. Even though they say some ridiculous things, like Dr. Frankenstein is playing that character as straight-laced as can be.
As serious,
funnier because of
Dr. Frankenstein,
Right. And I just think it makes all their silly lines funnier that they're trying to act so seriously. Whereas something like A History of the World, everyone's just having a goofy ass good time.
Yeah, for sure.
I do remember that movie. My friend who I watched that with weekly, I had to explain to him why Gregory Hines calls Oedipus motherfucker. Like, no, you don't understand. See, Oedipus ends up boning his mom. Oh, like, so that's why it's funny on two levels.
Get it?
So, yes. I do want to talk about both Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder on a more macro level, but do you have any closing thoughts on Young Frankenstein and anything you wanted to add there?
I do.
Yes.
One of the things that I would sort of point out is this was a time when Mel Brooks was making a lot of movies that were parodies of other movies. We've talked about Blazing Saddles. We've talked about obviously Young Frankenstein. It's not long. I mean, he made the Star Wars, and I would, Spaceballs is kind of in that same vein. Sure. And then there's High Anxiety, which of course is his take on Hitchcock. But the thing that I noticed is you don't have to be a fan of the movies he's making fun of to appreciate them. Like I said earlier, I haven't watched a lot of Westerns, certainly not enough to understand like the tropes. And I'm sure if I had, I maybe would appreciate the Blazing Saddles even more, because I was a fan of those old black and white Universal horror movies and appreciated Young Frankenstein on that level. I had watched a lot of the Hitchcock movies and appreciated High Anxiety. And I think that's something that like people who make these movies don't always understand. Like, you know, to really appreciate Airplane, it helps if you've seen Airport,
right,
and other disaster movies. But I've watched those. There was a period where people were making like disaster movie and superhero movie and epic movie, and with those, you had to have seen those movies to really understand the jokes. Like, you can't just watch those movies unto themselves and appreciate them. Whereas you can watch these Mel Brooks movies and, you know, the Abrams, Zucker Abrams
level.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people sometimes don't understand, that like to really make fun of something well, you have to love it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But you also need to make something that will stand on its own, regardless of if you have seen the source material.
Right.
Otherwise, it has to be a good work of art on its own. Otherwise,
like in Spaceballs, since you brought it up,
yeah.
Prior to Deadpool entering the arena, Spaceballs has always been one of my favorite movies of all time. And like, just as a good example, we just said the whole "we ain't found shit" sign, a scene with them where they're combing the desert,
and he has the pit.
That shit's funny if you've seen Star Wars. That shit's funny if you haven't seen Star Wars. Like, that movie's I love that movie. Oh, okay, sorry.
No, even the thing with when they have the VCR problem, like
this is
now.
Yeah. I hate yogurt, even with strawberry. Like, that whole everything about that movie is fantastic.
And I am excited for the sequel.
When does it? So a quick tangent. When does the sequel for Spaceballs 2 happen?
Hopefully soon. If he's 98,
I was gonna say we gotta get that done.
Like, it's him and George. He'll be done before George Martin is done writing his goddamn books. That's for sure.
Yes, that will happen for sure.
Paul, you got a date?
It just says it's in the works at Amazon. Because I think that's where he did History of the World Part 2, and Josh Gad is somehow involved. So
everyone is in that movie.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah. I actually haven't watched it yet out of fear, because I hold the first one in such high regard. But then again, JB Smoove is in it also, and I do love him. Yeah. I was watching
wasn't he in that like sci-fi space exploring?
He's in one of those. I forget which one. You're right.
Avenue 6.
Yes. That one.
On HBO or Max or something.
I still think of him as Olaf.
Yeah.
And
he's good as Olaf.
LeFou in the live action Beauty and the Beast. But Paul, let me ask you this. Why do you think these movies hold up 50 years later? Because most works of arts do not. And especially comedy, which is so specific to certain times.
I'm
You
thinking
stumped
now.
Stumped.
I mean, I think they're both just genuine. Like, there's some funny things that don't, tastes change, times change.
Right.
A kid now watching a movie in which someone makes a VCR joke, they're not going to get what's funny about that because it's of its time.
Yeah.
And I think that these movies, like the Airplane movies and like some other comedies, work because the humor is universal and
evergreen almost.
There's also like, goofiness just carries. I mean, like, people still, kids still like Bugs Bunny. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Like Bugs Bunny. Like, I keep going back to Bugs Bunny because it's sort of most apt. Like, Bugs Bunny is still considered funny by little kids because it's that kind of humor just works.
They have a whole Looney Tunes themed like land at Knott's Berry Farm. Like,
right.
because again, that whole cast of kidsy characters still makes kids happy.
But I think, to Paul's point, that fart scene will be funny to kids forever, like throughout time,
and some adults.
And some adults. This is true. But there's still, even the more sophisticated jokes are still funny today, which is what I find remarkable about both these movies. And I'm not sure why that is. Was it just smart writing, great performances,
Combination
I would say yes.
I think,
and it's funny because I mean, one of the things that's come up a couple times in this conversation is like, oh, you couldn't make Blazing Saddles today. I kind of think you could.
Just be a different.
It would just have to be made by the right person. Like somebody like a Mel Brooks couldn't make it because it would just get too much shit. But
imagine like a Ryan Coogler doing Blazing Saddles. I think would be hilarious.
I feel like Ryan Reynolds is like, I was gonna one of my tangents was gonna be who's today's contemporary kind of Mel Brooks, right? Like,
who hits
comedy the way and writes comedy and delivers comedy that way? And it's not a Dave Chappelle, but who's
no? But if you're thinking of movies, I would almost go Simon Pegg. Is the first thing that's
a great example. That's a good answer.
But even
I don't know. I didn't knew who could it be.
Yeah, I don't know if there is one, honestly.
I think Simon Pegg's perfect, right? Like goofy, always writes himself into his movies as a goofy character. Like can act well, can write well. The comedy's there. It's multi-layered. That's a great answer.
Yeah, but I don't want to see his version of Blazing Saddles. But I mean, this is the thing. I think that the right person could do it. I think the problem is that no matter who tried to do it, they would get grief from somebody because no matter what happens these days.
The internet.
Yeah. And I think the question is not would they get grief for it, but would they get legitimate grief for it? Because let's be honest, there are people who would just come down on them just
for the sake of doing it.
Yeah. Because that's like a thing now is like people's hobbies are, for some people, their hobby is being a troll.
On everybody else. Yeah.
Here's an interesting answer that I never would have thought of, but Zach Morris has chimed in and says that The Lonely Island has a Mel Brooks-ish sense of humor.
Yeah, Adam, Andy Samberg.
And then the guys that do the Please Don't Destroy are very much in that same vein. I don't know if they could hold up for a whole movie, but.
Well, no, I saw their movie. I do not.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen it. So
I love those kids, and I love that two of them are Nepo. You know those three kids on SNL that do the writing sketches? Please Don't Destroy. Two of them are Nepo baby.
Oh, okay.
I think one of them was a son of a joke writer from SNL. Two of their fathers are famous comedians.
Okay.
But they're this NYU comedy troupe.
Comedy trio.
Yeah. But Lonely Island, Andy Samberg is brave enough to do things like that.
Yeah.
And I also love that Andy Samberg became the star of his little trio. What is it? Avika something and then the other guy where is Andy Samberg really the one you want to put on TV out of the three of them?
I still love Hot Rod is still one of my favorite movies of all time too.
Somebody made that joke to Seth Rogen because who's his writing partner? Adam Goldberg? Adam Goldberg, is that it? But just like somebody's like, how ugly is that other guy that have to be that you became the face of the operation? so but yeah, that's a great answer, Zach Morris. And anyone out there, who do you think today's Mel Brooks is? That's a great question that deserves some more thought. Let's take a look at Gene Wilder's career. Obviously, both of these movies, Young Frankenstein, he co-wrote. All of his movies with Richard Pryor, Willy Wonka, of course. But I don't know that he gets the credit that he deserves for such an amazing career. Do you think he's underappreciated, Mac?
I always think, I mean, yeah, and I always grew up thinking of him more as an actor, not part of the writer, director kind of side of things. I always thought of him as just like a very good, talented performer, but I didn't know how much he actually contributed in the background beyond just being, the face of it.
Do you think he gets the credit he deserves, Paul? Why or why not?
I would have said no, but when he passed away, there was a outpouring of appreciation for him.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that, as we said earlier, when he was making these movies and the other ones, the critical appreciation for comedy just wasn't there. Right. And the fact that these movies have lasted and others, I think has helped. Although I do think that I also would say that I think he was appreciated for Willy Wonka, and then there was an even increased appreciation for that when the remakes came out, because the remakes were terrible, even though they did well. And like I think everybody said like, wait, why are they redoing this? Like the old one is a classic. It's amazing. No one can ever beat Gene Wilder. And then, those movies came out and people are like, this movie's terrible. Why, So in a weird way, I think that like happened.
Along with these two movies, Willy Wonka was also not commercially successful and not well received by critics. Yet all three of these movies are considered classics today, which is.
But that's always the case. I mean, you look back at. I mean, you could look back at like the movies that have won the Academy Award, and I guarantee you, like half of them, you're going to be like, I've never heard of this movie. I've never seen this movie. No one ever talks about this movie. Like
nobody thought Old School was going to go on to be like a fan favorite cult college movie.
Right. I mean, you look at Star Wars, like Star Wars has become one of the most iconic, appreciated movies of all time. But when it came out, people were like, "Oh, it's this silly space movie." It's it's like watching an old.
It was still commercially successful though, and these movies were not.
True, but I think in their case they fall into that category of movie that, for whatever reason, people didn't go see it in theaters, but when it came on cable and was on all the time, and people could see it, Austin Powers is another example of that, of a movie that like didn't really do well in theaters, and then when it hit cable, like it just exploded because everybody was like, oh, this movie actually really is funny, to the point where then the studio was like, oh, maybe we should make another one.
Another 12 movies. No.
And then they made The Love Guru.
Yeah, well,
everybody
has a love guru.
Let's apply this question. Let's talk more about Gene Wilder in this and Mel Brooks in this sense. Does Mel Brooks get the credit he deserves? Because I think he is a comedic genius.
In my mind, I have grown up with him as a comedic idol.
Oh.
Like he's up there with like, again, coming up in the era that I came up with and looking at like comedians and people who resonated and like just kind of helped shape who I am personally. Like, again, it was the Steve Martin, it was the Mel Brooks, it was like, Rodney Dangerfield, like era of comedy. And I just felt like they all kind of jived in that same kind of category together. But yeah, so for Mel Brooks for me is definitely like a very top of the mountain.
How about you, Paul? Do you think he gets the flowers he should?
Yeah, I do. Especially now, that he's gotten older and sort of cemented his iconic status. I think there was a period, after Spaceballs where he wasn't as active and kind of maybe fell by the wayside. But I think, in recent years, people are starting to revisit. I mean, the fact that they're making another Spaceballs, the fact that they made another History of the World.
Right.
What was the most recent? Was it the history of the new History of the World? What was the next biggest thing of recent note that Mel Brooks has done?
Well, let's look him up.
Yes. But I think you are correct. History of the World was
Well, he did the musical adaptation of The Producers.
Yeah, that's that. Okay, I knew there was another big thing somewhere in there. 2005.
He did little things here and there. He was in
Only Murders in the Building. It looks like he was in.
He did a couple things in the Hotel Transylvania series.
Oh yeah,
those movies. Yeah.
Toy Story 4.
Right. Yeah, it was in because he did History of the World in '81, and then To Be or Not to Be a couple years later, and then it just in Spaceballs.
He was in one episode of Dora the Explorer in 2014, doing the voice of the Mad Hatter.
Whoa!
Right. Oh, okay. So this is kind of where it goes awry, because in '93 he does Robin Hood Men in Tights, and then in '95 he does Dracula Dead and Loving It.
Yeah.
Neither of which were nearly as big or as good as the other ones. And then he worked on The Producers.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Zach Morris says he is still waiting for A Christmas Story. He has been talking about Spaceballs 2, the quest for more money, for decades. Yes, but now it is a thing that actual people are working on at Amazon. So
yeah,
we have high hopes for this.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned in the beginning, well, now let's wrap it up with these two movies are awesome and everyone should own them because
everybody should at least see them once. Like that, they're definitely like, don't miss out. Like they're great movies, even if they're old.
Yeah, I think they inform a lot of the humor that has come after it, all the good stuff anyway.
Yeah.
They're two classics, tremendously influential, and so much of it stands up today in a way that most movies from that time don't. So, yes, watch Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein. Now we're going to move to the bonus round.
Sorry.
Because the Superman trailer came out today, and because it is the last show of the year, we're not going to get a time to discuss it later. So we should discuss it now. I love this trailer. I know one of you didn't love it as much. Mac, why don't you share your thoughts on your trailer? What stood out for you? What was the vibe you got from it?
So I went into it with the foresight going, oh, it's another James Gunn thing. And I seemingly historically like James Gunn's work.
Yeah.
So I had high hopes that are also weighed down by probably something that Paul feels, which is just a general 1-2 punch that continues to happen of being let down with DC driven like superhero movies. So, but I had high hopes. And so I'm also like a big fan of watching some of the more kind of recent like DC shows, like Flash and things like that, and Arrow and all. So like I'm fairly like caught up into like what some of the more like newer kind of recent versions of the characters should be, angles they could go down. So I walked away with the feels is where I kind of sum up. I walked away, as much as I didn't know if I would, I walked away the way I think the biggest thing for me is the way they do the Superman theme music throughout that trailer. It plays to your heartstrings of just wanting to see Superman do Superman.
Yeah, for those that haven't seen it yet, it does take the John Williams theme, but it gives it to a lead guitar. So instead of da 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 da, it has the distorted guitar,
and it makes you feel it differently.
It reminds me of the guitar in Top Gun almost.
A little bit, right? Yeah. Totally.
Now, Paul, you had a different experience with the trailer, but because you've been burned by a lot of what DC has done, please explain.
So, I even before I saw the trailer, I've already decided I'm not paying to see this movie in theater.
I'm out.
I'm out. I've been burned too many times
One time screw you, two times screw me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Eight times.
Yeah. What the hell's wrong with me? But that said, I thought it was a good trailer. It made me think like, okay, this could be kind of cool. It does seem very different than a James Gunn movie. Like, it's not a goofy version of Superman. And then of course Crypto shows up and you're like, wait, what? Because like it doesn't look like the Crypto in the like it's not like a when you see Crypto in the comics or like in that animated movie they did a little while ago, which actually was entertaining, like he's like I don't know what kind of dog it is, but it's like a kind of like a greyhound kind of dog. Like it's a muscular looking dog, and this looks like a
dominant.
Yeah, it looks like a dog that would be like, if in normal life would be able to stand up for itself and bite a burglar. And like this looked like a little fluffy dog, and it was like I'm like, okay. And then you see Nathan Fillion show up, looking like Jack,
yes.
And that haircut's just ridiculous. And I was like, okay, maybe this is going to be very James Gunn. And now I don't feel bad about not wanting to see it in theaters because and also like, and then like Hawk Girl shows up and like
Girl, yeah,
Mr. Terrific.
Oh yeah, Mr. Terrific, who I've never liked as a character. Always thought he was idiotic, and I was like, what? Huh? Okay.
And may or may not be Metamorpho.
No, it's supposed to be Metamorpho.
Okay. I love that because it's such a weird character with such a weird costume. But going back to your Crypto bit, I mean, look at the way he's made Rocket and the other animals in Guardians 3.
Oh no, I appreciated the Crypto thing. I just thought it was funny. But
it's very much him though.
It's very him, and I was like, okay, now maybe this is going to be more James Gunny than the first parts of that trailer led me to believe. But when I started to see Guy Gardner and all this other stuff, I was like, ugh.
But he appears to have won so many people with just the dog. Not just the dog being cute.
Well, the dog is cute. I mean,
but the way the dog comes in because it's so powerful.
Yeah, it's coming like a freight train.
Exactly.
Right.
It looks like a whole herd of bison or something. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say this. The movie opens, I think, July 11th, which means it'll be on Max
July 12th. Depending on
well, you joke about that, but Joker Fleur de Lis or whatever was on HBO this weekend, so it's not far off.
Well, but, I think this will do better than that.
Yes, it will. It will probably do better than that. But the night it airs, like it'll air on like HBO, which being on the West Coast, I'm watching the East Coast feed means I will get it at about 6:00.
Yep.
Maybe I will watch it that day if there's no Saturday Night Live that night. Otherwise, because again, we get Saturday Night Live at 8:30. But otherwise, I will watch it Sunday afternoon. I'm not going to wait. When it's available to me for free, I will watch it right away.
I am baffled that it's July 11th and not July 4th weekend for the Truth, Justice, and American Way guy. That just means,
I feel like there might be something else coming out that weekend
from Warner's as well, but I don't know. It just seemed more appropriate.
New Independence Day movie.
Well, no. So Zach Morris says, I like that it looks so heavily influenced by the Silver Age era. Yes. And we aren't no Superman origin. That's right. Yeah. Here's
what it is. Jurassic World Rebirth opens July 2nd.
Yeah, I could see not wanting to go up against that, but still.
Yeah.
It makes more sense for this to be July 4th weekend.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would have wanted that, but you don't want to go up against Jurassic.
Right.
So let me ask a question, because you guys have mentioned him by name and I'm not as plugged in here. Most everybody's natural knee-jerk reaction to any sort of Green Lantern mention of recent note is kind of like allergic and like Ryan Reynolds, like that sucked.
Yeah.
It was a fucking terrible movie, pardon my language. But like, so why is I know Nathan Fillion's great. Like he's been great in pretty much everything he's done. But why is this version? What is this Green Lantern? Why is he different?
So I am the resident Green Lantern expert here, and I love the characters, and I love the one Nathan Fillion is playing. For people that don't know him,
like I'm aware there's different lanterns. I got that
right. So he's playing a Green Lantern named Guy Gardner. He was actually, when the alien Abin Sur was dying, he was actually the better choice to replace him. But Hal Jordan was closer, so Hal Jordan became the next Green Lantern.
Got it.
They've changed his origin a few times, but he was a football star that wrecked his knee. He comes from a home where he was abused by an alcoholic father, and he has a bit of brain damage. So when he becomes Green Lantern, he has this attitude. He gets into fights with other superheroes. One of the most famous scenes from Justice League International, he starts talking shit to Batman, which is just not a good idea.
Right.
And then Batman just decks him with one punch and knocks him out cold. But he will do stuff like that. He's immature. So they always say, like, you know, you may be a brain damaged thug, but damn it, Guy, you're our brain damaged thug. So there was a time also where he was kind of like the anti-hero. They actually gave him a Yellow Lantern ring for a while, so he became a pain in the ass that way. He's very 90s. So if you think about like the attitude, the macho guy attitude of the 90s, it is Guy Gardner, but for some reason with a bowl haircut.
Okay.
Oh, here's one.
I mistook in the he's like Draymond Green.
That's a great call, Zach Morris.
I mistook Hawk Girl for Hawkman. When I saw the trailer, and then only after going through and watching it again, and then looking up who was in the trailer, like, you know, then I was like, oh, it's Hawk Girl. Like, what? Why? What do you think the relevance is?
James Gunn said they also wanted to take advantage of the popularity of the animated series, and Hawk Girl was really popular in that, or maybe taking advantage of the Hawk to a Girl popularity. I don't know.
Yeah. No, we don't want Hawk to a marketing campaign that we couldn't go with. Corporate said no.
and the actor playing Hawk Girl was in Madam Web also. So that's interesting.
Well, Isabel Merced. I wonder if that's also because otherwise you have an all-male cast, and that really doesn't fly anymore. You know, like if they had done Hawkman, and then, you know, you have Guy Gardner, Superman, Hawkman, you know, literally Lois Lane is your only female in the whole movie. I mean, we don't know what, I mean, Crypto is a boy, but it's maybe played by a girl. You know, and I think that, you know, I know there's this whole like, oh, you know, go woke and go broke. Well, no, actually, if you don't go woke, you go broke is what really we see. And I think that's part of the reason they went with Hawk Girl, because
that makes sense.
You know, you gotta have the ladies in there, you know.
Right.
If you have an all male cast, then, like, you know, you're gonna have problems.
Think about how much what's her name, Black Widow, carried so much of the Avengers.
Oh, right.
She was quite a bit of that.
What's your problem with Mr. Terrific, Paul? I love this character almost all the way back from the original JSA one to the modern, the Curtis Holt one. I love that he has a jacket that says "Fair Play" on it. I think it's silly.
He's just one of the, like, once you get past the B level with DC, I think it really goes downhill. I mean, for me, like, I love the Super Friends. Like, you know, the main Justice League people, but once and some of their associates, like, you know, Batgirl, Batwoman, but once you get past like the main people in DC, I think the quality really goes down. Like, I mean, there's certainly people that I hate more than. I mean, there's certainly people that I don't like even more than him. Like, he's just kind of I'm kind of like, yeah, whatever.
So here's one for you.
Yeah.
I recently read an interview thing with Jesse Eisenberg where he had come out and said he
I
got
saw this today.
such vitriol and such hatred from his version of playing Lex Luthor that it actually affected his career. And my question now is, do you think somebody like Nicholas Hoult can deliver like the Lex Luthor that people are hoping for? And he's also kind of the current shoes, I guess, are almost like worn by what's his name, John Cryer,
from the TV version,
the TV show.
He did well in that. I mean, Nicholas Hoult looks the part, and I like that he's physically bigger than like Jesse Eisenberg or John Cryer. Because if you look at the animated version of Lex Luthor, he's
a big dude,
rapping dude. So I like that Nicholas Hoult. But I don't know.
I always imagine him to be like Kingpin level in size and scope, but like
it's hard after Michael Clark Duncan played him and he became massive.
Yeah.
After that, I like it, but I have a soft spot in my heart for Nicholas Hoult ever since About a Boy. I'm like, wow, the goofy kid from About a Boy became Beast. Good for him. And
and also one of the Mad Max Wild Boys or whatever they're called.
Yes, and he got to date Jennifer Lawrence. That's probably the thing I'm most proud of him. The goofy kid from About a Boy got to date Jennifer Lawrence. That's amazing.
I think with Jesse Eisenberg, like that version of the character was different than what we expect, in much the same way that Jared Leto's Joker was so different. And
that's not a good comparison.
And they just didn't really land.
Yeah. But also Jesse Eisenberg is one of those actors who does that one thing, whereas at least Jordan Catalano could do a lot of different things, no matter how pretentious he gets. Whereas I don't know, I've never seen Jesse Eisenberg not play a Jesse Eisenberg role.
Not play Jesse Eisenberg playing character X.
I mean, I'm sure he has, but I also haven't seen a lot of his movies. But he's almost like a Jack Black kind of guy, where he plays that one thing most of the time.
Yep.
Zach Morris adds, Gunn says his version of Lex will be very different than the previous movie versions of Lex. Yes.
The other thing that caught my eye was the half robot that Superman was kind of crouching down and seemingly upset that it was dying.
Yeah.
And
I thought that was Kellex, who was his father's servant robot.
Right. And his like last connection to kind of like Krypton.
Whoa, wait. Is this true? He said this version of Lex will be more like
he didn't say that he's like he didn't say he's like a sorcerer in the sense that he wields magic, but he's going to be technologically advanced to the point of seeming like a Tony Stark in the Iron Man movie. Like how far ahead he was than the Curve. Like it's not that he's not like Merlin or something. You know what I mean? Like
he's gonna be wearing a robe.
He's like Elon Musk with more competence or something. I don't know.
Well, I'm excited still. That trailer to me, like I wasn't looking forward to it. Like I didn't know that this trailer was coming. And it came out of left field for me, and I was like, oh, I'm curious, and now I'm happy and looking forward to seeing another movie when that comes out.
Same, and I like the vibe of it. Also, it just seems after all the Zack Snyder stuff, I love how positive and hopeful it seems, which is what you want from a Superman movie, but also reminds me of when the original movie came out. What was it, 79 or something?
Yeah.
So at that time, I don't remember for sure, but America was in a dark period and it needed something positive and uplifting. So maybe this is the movie we need in 2025.
Only because you mentioned it earlier. Fun fact, Richard Pryor was in one of the Superman movies.
Yes, 3, where he is a computer programmer, which is not the most believable role for Richard Pryor.
All right, that's funny.
But yeah, I am excited to see this movie. Kind of makes me bummed out that DC has burned you so badly, Paul, that you were not?
I'm sad we have to wait so long. Like, I was hoping that there would be less of a kind of delta between seeing this trailer and when the movie comes out.
I mean, July isn't too, that's not too far. 7 months.
It's too far for me.
We got a lot of stuff coming in between then. You know, for Valentine's Day, we can all take our dates to see Captain America, which is not looking so good to me. I'm scared
That
of
one
it.
looks good to me. I'm
Oh.
excited for that.
Apparently it's testing poorly and they're re-editing again. So
That's never a good sign.
I am more excited for what's the Dark Avengers one? Thunderbolts. That
Yeah,
one
I wanna
looks
see
more
that
in my
too.
wheelhouse.
So
But yeah, that'll wrap it up for our last show of the year. We will be back in January. We're going to talk about all the stuff we're looking forward to in 2025. We'll do
when does Peacemaker's next season come?
let's do some research.
That's another one like that I need more Peacemaker.
Same. I've been rewatching it lately.
I need to go. Honestly, I just literally take the mental box. Like, go
Freaking
rewatch.
hilarious. But yeah, we're going to talk about. We'll do an episode of movies we're looking forward to, TV shows, and hopefully games we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Zach Morris. Oh, we're actually talking about Secret Level before we shot. Yes, you
Love
have
it.
great holidays too. I'll actually be hitting you up soon as I finish making my new intro music with my brother. It's going to be some interesting
Indiana
stuff.
Jones, great game. Play it.
And read Paul's review on Paul Semel.
Paul's review, and then play it.
Oh yeah, like and subscribe and all that good stuff.
Right. Marketing, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Blah.
Paul's website and Mac's website, they're both in the video description. Go visit those. And Happy New Year. Have a great holiday. And best wishes to you and yours from all the crew at RPadTV. See you next time.